Good afternoon and welcome to today's statewide webinar hosted by SpedTech's and Partners Resource Network. My name is Sarah Untersea and I am part of the SpedTech's team. The topic for today's webinar is special education evaluations. A few reminders. This webinar is being recorded and the recording will be posted to our SpedTech site. It usually takes about a week in order for that to be posted, but we will drop our website link into the chat so that you are able to access that once it becomes available. The chat feature is only available today if you require technical assistance. However, you may put questions in the Q&A section. The presenters will review your submissions, which will help us with clarifications and FAQs in the future. There will be no live Q&A today. SpedTech is the Special Education Information Center for Texas. We're a collaborative project between Region 10 Education Service Center and Texas Education Agency. We help parents understand their rights and responsibilities under IDEA and facilitate collaboration when there are concerns between the parent and the school district. We also serve as a resource for educators. We offer support via phone, email, or live chat for families and professionals, webinars, and resources. Our contact information is on the screen. I'm now going to turn it over to Stephanie McLaughlin to share some additional information about Partners Resource Network.
Thank you, Sarah, and welcome, everyone. My name is Stephanie McLaughlin, and I am the Training and Evaluation Specialist for Partners Resource Network. Partners Resource Network is the nonprofit agency that operates the Texas statewide network of parent training and information centers. We are funded through the Department of Education Office of Special Education Programs. Throughout Texas, there are 4 projects known as PACT, PATH, PIN, and TEAM. Our mission at Partners Resource Network is to empower and support Texas families and individuals impacted by disabilities or special healthcare needs. We do this through a network of highly skilled, regionally located coordinators who are knowledgeable in local policies, services, and resources, as well as state and national guidelines. We provide training, information, and one-on-one assistance at no cost to Texas families and youth. We serve parents of children and youth with disabilities from birth to age 26, as well as youth self-advocates between the ages of 14 and 26.
Thanks, Stephanie. We are excited to welcome our presenter, Mandy Young. Prior to working at the Texas Education Agency, Mandy Young served as a school psychologist and then worked with adolescents and families in private practice as a licensed professional counselor for several years. Mandy began her career at TEA in 2019 as a dispute resolution program specialist. She currently works as a special education technical assistance manager in the Department of Special Education Technical Assistance with the Office of Special Populations and Student Supports. Mandy has a passion for helping educators and families learn how to collaborate and to have the resources they need to achieve positive outcomes for their students. At this time, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to turn it over to Mandy.
Thanks, Sarah. Let me share my screen. Okay, welcome to the Special Education Evaluations for Students webinar. My name is Mandy Young, and I'm a Special Education Technical Assistance Manager at the Texas Education Agency. And I'm excited to talk to you all today about the process of special education evaluations. Our agenda today starts with a quick overview of special education evaluation process. Then we'll take a deeper dive into the evaluation process through a fictional case study. And then finally, we'll end with some frequently asked questions regarding evaluation. So let's start with a quick review of special education evaluation process. So just a heads up, in this presentation, when I mention parents, this includes biological or adoptive parent, foster parent, a guardian, an individual acting in place of a biological parent with whom the child lives or is legally responsible for the child's welfare, or a surrogate parent. In this section, I'm using the first part of the overview of special education for parents form to show an overview of the special education evaluation process. This form and a few other forms are required to be given to parents when your child is referred for a special education evaluation, or if a parent requests one. So the beginning of the overview of special education for parents form discusses what is special education. So what is special education? When a child receives special education, it means that a public school provides custom services and instruction specific to the needs of that student. And special education is available because of federal law called the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, which provides students with disabilities and their parents special legal rights to receive these individualized learning opportunities. So how can special education services help your child? If your child is eligible for special education services, they'll have access to services and supports that are specially designed to meet your child's unique needs. And special education services provide individualized programming at no cost to you and may include special education teachers and service providers such as occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech language pathologists, and providers of dyslexia instruction. Okay, the special education process. Parents have a right to request a special education evaluation at any time, and schools are required to refer a student for an evaluation when a disability is suspected that might require special education services. It's important to understand the steps of the special education process. And the first step is referral for evaluation. This also may include a request for special education evaluation from a parent. Next, there's consent to evaluate. Then the evaluation. After the evaluation, there's an admission review and dismissal, or ARD committee meeting, to determine eligibility. And if a student qualifies for special education services, an individualized education program, or an IEP, is developed and the IEP is then implemented. In this presentation, we will review those steps 1 through 5 before we take a deeper dive into the evaluation process through a fictional case study. So the first step is when a referral for special education evaluation is made. A referral is required by law when a public school feels that your child may have a disability that requires special education services to be successful. A referral is called a request for special education evaluation when a parent makes it. A request should be made in writing to proper staff member. The school will respond with information on whether it will proceed with an evaluation, and the school must respond to a request for special education evaluation that is made in writing within 15 school days. The second step of the evaluation process is consent. So you will be asked whether you consent for your school to evaluate your child. Consent to evaluate is permission you choose to give for specially trained personnel to evaluate and assess your child in specific areas. And it's used by the school to start the timeline by which the school must complete your child's evaluation. And we're going to get into that a little bit, but with some exceptions, an evaluation must be completed within 45 school days. The third step of evaluation is done by a group of trained professionals. An evaluation is called a full individual and initial evaluation, or an FIIE, which includes a written report of education recommendations and information about your child's strengths, interests, and challenges. Professionals with training in the suspected disability must participate. For instance, someone like a licensed dyslexia specialist should participate if dyslexia is suspected. This evaluation is done at no cost to you. And if you do not agree with the school's evaluation, you may ask for an independent educational evaluation, or IEE. And this would be done by someone who's not employed by the school. Okay, the fourth step is when the admission review and dismissal, or ARD committee, meets to determine if your child is eligible for special education services. The ARD committee is a team, including you, teachers, school administrators, those with special expertise about your child, and professionals with special training about the suspected disability. The ARD committee is also a meeting to discuss your child's evaluation report, identify your child's strengths, and areas of need, and then determine whether your child has a disability and the need for special education services. Once the evaluation report is done, an ARD committee typically has 30 calendar days to determine eligibility and develop the IEP. The fifth and final step of the evaluation process is the individualized education program. So if your child is eligible for special education services, then the ARD committee will also develop an individualized education program, or IEP. An IEP is a collection of information that identifies your child's disability. It shows your child's current strengths and areas of need, identifies goals to be worked on, and shows the special education and related services that are required for your child to be successful. And an IEP is a document that a school must follow once the process for developing it is complete, and you consent to your child receiving services. Services would begin as soon as possible. You have the right to participate in the development of the IEP and agree or disagree to your child's getting special education services. So just a reminder, as we already talked about SpedTex, more information about your rights as a parent can be found at spedtex.org. And there you can find the Parent's Guide to the ARD process, as well as the Notice of Procedural Safeguards in several languages. And we'll discuss these documents more later. Okay, we are going to walk through the special education evaluation process by diving into a fictional case study for Daniel, a third grade student who's having difficulty with making progress in writing. Okay, to start off this fictional case study, I will go over some information about Daniel's progress in school. Daniel's in third grade and has difficulties with writing. He struggles with the ability to construct grammatically correct sentences, as well as utilize grade level appropriate language and word choice in his writing. He has difficulty recalling information and rules for proper punctuation, capitalization, word order, and spelling, as well as maintaining ideas, including sequence and organization, while transcribing the words. So Daniel needs to strengthen his skill in elaborating and expanding upon ideas. And Daniel participates in classroom tasks. He's respectful with staff and peers and turns in assignments on time. When given supports from his teachers, such as a graphic organizer and reminders to use revising and editing strategies, he still continues to struggle and make progress. Daniel's parents are concerned that he's not made progress, and they also suspect that he may have a learning disability. Daniel's mother decides to make a request for special education evaluation. So in this case, Daniel's mother makes a request for special education evaluation through an email to the principal of Daniel's school. In the email, Daniel's mother states she's requesting a special education evaluation for her third grade son and outlines her concerns about Daniel's progress in writing. She ends the email with her contact information and politely asks to be contacted within 15 school days. The school gives Daniel's mother some required forms that she reviews before giving consent for a special education evaluation. She receives what is called the Notice of Procedural Safeguards, which is a document describing parents' rights under the Individuals with Disability Education Act, or that IDEA. She also receives a TEA-created form called the Overview of Special Education for Parents, which we discussed earlier, and gives a description for the process of evaluation, identification, and services. She receives what is called prior written notice, which is created by the school and is something that is required whenever a school proposes an evaluation. The purpose of the prior written notice is to ensure that parents are provided all relevant information so that they are fully informed about the actions related to special education identification, evaluation, services, and placements the school has proposed or refused to provide. If a child is later identified, parents receive this prior written notice again. So it's also required whenever the school is proposing or refusing to change any services or placement of the student. So in this fictional case, Daniel's school proposes to evaluate him for special education services due to a suspected specific learning disability, or SLD. And after Daniel's mother reviews these documents, she's given the opportunity to consent to Daniel's evaluation. Once the school receives her consent, it generally has 45 school days to complete the evaluation. And this timeline varies a bit depending on when parental consent is received during the school year and how many absences your child has during the evaluation timeframe. The first day of a full individual initial evaluation timeline is the first school day following the date written consent is received by the school or the local education agency, LEA, from the parent. Okay, so let's talk more about the timeline for evaluation. Daniel's mother signs consent to evaluate on Friday, September 27th, 2024. Again, once the school receives her consent, the written consent, it generally has 45 school days to complete the evaluation. This timeline varies a bit depending on the parental consent and is received during the school year and how many absences Daniel has during the evaluation timeframe. But in this fictional case, Daniel's mother signs the consent to evaluate September 27th, 2024. The first day of full individual initial evaluation timeline is the first school day following the date written consent is received by the school from the parent. So this means that the timeline for this 45 school days begins on Monday, September 30th, 2024. And if school is not in session on October 14th, 2024, and school is not in session for 1 week from November 25th through the 29th, and Daniel is not absent during this evaluation time, then his evaluation must be complete by December 9th, 2024. If Daniel was absent from school 3 or more school days during this evaluation period, then the evaluation period must be extended by the number of school days that Daniel was absent. So for this case study, Daniel's not absent during the evaluation timeline. Okay, so during the 45 school day timeline, the school will conduct an evaluation of Daniel in all areas of suspected disability, and in this case, specific learning disability, or SLD. That is to determine if he has a disability and to determine his educational needs. The evaluation process for the child must include information about the child's academic, developmental, and functional performance. It must be administered by trained and knowledgeable personnel, and this is called a multidisciplinary team, or MDT. It also must be administered in the child's native language or other mode of communication, and it has to be unbiased or given in such a way so as not to discriminate against the child, regardless of his or her cultural background, race, or disability. Okay, we just talked about a multidisciplinary team, or MDT. So what is an MDT? A special education evaluation must be administered by trained and knowledgeable personnel, and this is called a multidisciplinary team, or an MDT. The MDT who completes the special education evaluation is the team that completes the special education evaluation, and it typically includes the student's parents, the student's general education teacher, evaluation personnel, and this could be a school psychologist or an educational diagnostician, and then any other individuals with special expertise that may be required. So in this fictional case study for Daniel's MDT, it's comprised of Daniel's parents, Daniel's teacher, a school psychologist, and in this case, Daniel's MDT includes an occupational therapist. However, it's not required. But in this case, Daniel's struggling with writing, and an occupational therapist might provide insight into what areas specifically Daniel may need accommodations with in physical handwriting, while the school psychologist and Daniel's teacher might have insight in identifying Daniel's needs and best ways to help with his difficulty in recalling grammatical rules and maintaining and expanding on his ideas. So when Daniel's MDT is conducting a comprehensive evaluation, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, requires the MDT to use a variety of assessment tools and strategies to gather relevant functional, development, and academic information about the child, including information provided by the parents. The MDT may not use any single measure or assessment as the only part of the evaluation, and it has to utilize technically sound instruments and ensure Daniel is assessed in all areas related to the suspected disability, in this case, the SLD. So over the 45 school day timeline, the MDT must gather a variety of information, determine if Daniel meets criteria for an SLD, and if he needs special education and related services to make progress in his classroom. Informal data identifies the student's strengths and needs without norms, whereas curriculum-based data identifies the student's performance level within that taught curriculum. And then criterion reference data identifies the student's performance level in relation to specific tasks or expectations. And then norm reference data identifies the student's strengths and weaknesses compared to groups of students their same age or grade. So determining Daniel's achievement is accomplished by using multiple measures, such as in-class tests, grade average over time, for example, 6 weeks or the semester, norm or criterion reference tests, and statewide assessments. Data collection and analysis from multiple sources, including informal, curriculum-based, criterion referenced, and norm reference measures, is necessary to determine if Daniel is failing to achieve in one or more of those areas connected to a specific learning disability. Using multiple measures involves looking at more than just scores. So qualitative data, such as observations, teacher input, and parent interviews, yield important information too. And this graphic is not an exhaustive, but it provides examples of different types of data sources that an MD team might use in evaluating. Okay, so the 45 school day evaluation timeline passes. MDT completes their comprehensive evaluation and a report is written. And after the evaluation report is completed, the school has up to 30 calendar days to hold an ARD committee meeting to determine eligibility. This meeting will go over the evaluation report, and the ARD committee will determine if Daniel qualifies as a student with a disability, and then also whether he has the need for special education and related services because of his disability. There is one exception to the 30-day calendar day timeframe, and that is when the 30th calendar day falls during the summer when school is not in session. And in those cases, the school has until the 15th school day of the next school year to have the initial ARD committee meeting. So Daniel's evaluation was completed on December 9th, 2024. And this means that based on this fictional case study, what the ARD must be scheduled by January 8th, 2025, which is 30 calendar days after December 9th. Parents are entitled to a copy of that evaluation report in their native language. A new commissioner rule amendment now requires a parent receive a copy of the evaluation report as soon as possible after its completion, but no later than 5 school days prior to the initial ARD committee meeting to determine eligibility and potential placement for special education services. So in this fictional case, Daniel's parents are entitled to the evaluation report by December 18th because it's 5 school days prior to January 8th. Okay, so at the eligibility determination ARD committee meeting, the ARD committee, which includes Daniel's parents, determine if Daniel is eligible for special education and related services. And in this case, the ARD committee determines that Daniel is eligible because he has a specific learning disability and written expression, and he demonstrates a need for special education and related services to make progress. In Texas, the student must either demonstrate an insufficient response to scientific, research-based intervention or exhibit a pattern of strengths and weaknesses as one of the components considered to determine whether the child meets the eligibility criteria of specific learning disability. This information is explained in the evaluation report, and schools may use either method as part of evaluating and identifying SLD. The ARD committee develops an IEP and offers an opportunity for his parents to consent to the provision of special education related services. So for more information about the ARD process, please see the Parents Guide to the Admission Review and Dismissal Process that's found at SpedTex, or you can also see it at the second half of that overview of special education for parents form that we went over. In January, SpedTex is going to have another webinar about the ARD process, which will follow the same format and use the same fictional case study. So check out the webinar in January 2025. Okay, let's move on to some frequently asked questions that we at the agency are often asked. Just a heads up, I'll likely refer to school throughout the questions and responses. Unless I state otherwise, school could be interchangeable with district, district school campus, or an open enrollment charter school. First question is around initial evaluations. When can I request an independent educational evaluation, or IEE? You can request an independent educational evaluation at the school district's expense if you disagree with an evaluation provided by your school district. You can see the parent's guide to the ARD process for more information. Next question. If the school refuses to do initial evaluation for my child, what are my options? So as a parent, you have several options. First, you're strongly encouraged to work with your child's school to resolve differences as they occur. You may ask the school about what dispute resolution options it offers for the parents. And then second, TA offers 4 formal options for resolving special education disagreements: a state IEP facilitation, mediation services, the special education complaint resolution process, and then a due process hearing program. Again, refer to that notice of procedural safeguards for more information about that, and it's on pages 12 through 15. So moving on to the next question. I moved to Texas from out of state. Does my child's new school have to reevaluate my child, or can they use the evaluation and IEP from the previous out-of-state school? It depends. So first, the parent or previous school district must verify that your child had an IEP that was in effect in the previous district. And then after reviewing your child's previous evaluation, your child's new school district may determine a new evaluation is needed to meet federal and state requirements. So your new school district may decide a new evaluation is not necessary if the previous evaluation meets federal and state requirements and there's no new suspected disabilities or areas of concern. In this case, your child's new school will develop, adopt, and implement a new IEP with Texas requirements no later than 20 school days from the date of verification. Okay, so the next question is, how do I request an evaluation for my preschool age student, ages 3 through 5, who is not yet enrolled in a public school? So parents have a right to request special education evaluation at any time. So if a parent has concerns about their preschool child's progress, the parent may contact a school administrator, principal, special education director, or someone responsible for child find at the school their child would attend and request a special education evaluation. Remember, it's best to make this request in writing. Moving on to the next question. How long does it take to get an evaluation completed after I make a request? So once the school receives your written consent to evaluate your child, it generally has 45 school days to complete the evaluation. And this timeline, it varies a bit depending on when parental consent is received during the school year and how many absences your child has during that evaluation timeframe. So what happens, next question is, what happens if my child is not eligible for special education? The Admission Review and Dismissal Committee, the ARD committee, decides if the child is eligible for special education. You, the parent, are an important member of this committee. And if it's determined that your child is not eligible for special education, it may be appropriate to refer your child to the Section 504 committee at your child's school. If your child has a disability but does not need special education, they may benefit from a Section 504 plan with some accommodations. The next question is, can my homeschooled child get a special education evaluation? Yes. The school district where you reside is responsible for what is called child find. They have an obligation to identify, locate, and evaluate all children with disabilities residing in their boundaries who need special education related services. So just a reminder that the best way to request special education evaluation is in writing to the school district administrator in which you reside. Okay, next question. I have an outside evaluation showing my child has autism. How can I ensure he receives special education services at school? Before a child may receive special education services, the school district must conduct a full individual and initial evaluation of the child. After the evaluation is completed, the ARD committee will meet to decide if your child's eligibility for special education and related services. So as a parent, you're an important part of that committee, member of that committee. If you have obtained an outside evaluation for your child and you choose to share it with the school, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, says that the school must consider the results of that outside evaluation when making any decisions about providing a free, appropriate public education, or FAPE, to your child. So as long as the evaluation meets the school district's criteria. So however, IDEA does not require the school to accept and follow the outside evaluator's results and recommendations. Okay, let's discuss the next question. So how long do I have to wait to hear back from the school after I ask them to evaluate my child? It is best if you put your request for your child to be evaluated in writing, remember, to the special education director or the campus principal where your child attends. The school has 15 school days to respond in writing to your request. And the school may either provide an opportunity for you as a parent to consent to an evaluation, or they might refuse to provide the evaluation and provide you with materials about your parental rights around this decision. The school must also respond to a verbal request, but there's no legally defined time frame to do so like there is for a written request. Okay, next question. Can I choose which areas my child will be evaluated in? No, your child's evaluation must be comprehensive in nature. So this means that your child must be assessed in all areas of suspected disability, including, if appropriate, communicative status, health, vision, hearing, motor abilities, social and emotional status, general intelligence, and academic performance. Okay, next question. My child had an outside evaluation completed and I gave it to the school. They said they have to do their own testing. Is this right? And it depends. Public schools and charter schools must meet federal and state requirements for evaluations. So an outside evaluation may not meet these requirements. So the multidisciplinary team, that MDT, should complete a review of existing evaluation data, or READ meeting, to determine what other evaluation or information is needed, which may or may not require a formal assessment in this case. Okay, next question. I think my 2-year-old might need special education services. What should I do? When a parent has concern about a child aged birth to 36 months, Early Childhood Intervention Services, or ECI, may be able to help you and your child. You should contact your local ECI program. So find the local program in your area. You can go to the Texas Health and Human Services website or call 877-787-8999. Or you can call the special education director in your school district and about your child, wherever your child would attend, and when they're school aged, and then tell them about your concerns. The school district has 7 school days to contact your local Early Childhood Intervention, or ECI, agency about your concerns. Then someone from that ECI agency should contact you. Okay, next question. What is developmental delay? So this disability category of developmental delay may begin to be used by an ARD committee as of the 24-25 school year. So a child with developmental delay is one who's between the ages of 3 through 9 and evaluated by the multidisciplinary team for at least one of the other 12 IDEA disability conditions. So this evaluation indicates the child needs special education related services, and the data in the evaluation shows evidence of, but does not clearly confirm, the presence of the suspected disability because of the child's young age. Okay, let's move on to the next question. What happens if my school gets consent to evaluate my child, but it's almost summer? So there is a specific timeline for when it's almost summer. Typically, the school has 45 school days from the date it receives written parental consent to evaluate until the evaluation report is completed. However, if written parental consent to evaluate is received by the school less than 35 school days before the last day of school, the written evaluation report must be completed not later than the 45th school day into the following school year. So if the child has been absent 3 or more days from school during that evaluation period, the written evaluation report may be extended with additional numbers of days absent added. So let's talk more about that timeline for evaluation when consent is signed less than 35 school days before the last day of school. If the school district receives written consent for an FIIE signed by the student's parent, including students under 5 years of age by September 1st that are not enrolled in a public or charter school, and for students enrolled in a private or homeschool setting. So that less than 35 school days before the last instructional day of the school year. The written report of the FIIE must be completed not later than the 45th school day following the date written consent was received into the next following school year. So if the consent was signed at least 35, but less than 45 school days before the last day of instruction, the written report of the FIIE must be completed and provided to the parent not later than June 30th of that year. So, and as just as a reminder, if a student has been absent 3 or more days from school during that period, then the written report of the FIIE must be completed not later than 45 school days, plus the number of days absent following the date written consent was received. So I mocked up an example of when our fictional case study, Daniel's mother, signed consent to evaluate when there are less than 35 school days before the last instructional day of the school year. So if Daniel's mother signs consent to evaluate on Friday, May 9th, 2025, the 45 school day timeline starts on Monday, May 12th, 2025. If school ends on May 30th, 2025, then this is less than 35 days from the last instructional school day of the year. This means that the written report must be completed not later than the 45th school day following May 12th, 2025, into the next school year, which means that the evaluation must be completed by September 30th, 2025. The timeline for the 45 school day begins on Monday, May 12th. If school is not in session on May 26th and the school is not throughout June, July, and the first 2 weeks in August, and Daniel's not absent during the evaluation time, his evaluation must be complete by 45 school days after May 12th, which would be September 30th. So if he was absent from school 3 or more days, again, remember it would be extended by the number of school days that he was absent. So if the consent was signed at least 35, but less than 45 school days before the last day of instruction, then the written report of the FIIE must be completed and provided to the parent not later than June 30th of that year. All right, we'll move on to the next question. What is included in a special education evaluation? A special education evaluation should include 4 types of data: informal, such as observations, interviews with parents and the child's teachers. Second is criterion reference assessments, such as results from the state assessments and district benchmarks. Third is curriculum-based measurements, which provide baseline data about how your child's skills in reading and math and writing. And then 4 is the norm reference testing, such as academic achievement testing. So a special education evaluation must be comprehensive in nature. So this means that your child must be assessed in all areas of suspected disability, including, if appropriate, that communicative status, health, vision, hearing, motor abilities, social and emotional status, general intelligence, and academic performance. So the evaluation should include information about how your child's disability impacts his progress in his enrolled grade level curriculum. And it should identify his areas of need, both academic, functional, such as behavior or feeding skills. And it should recommend evidence-based interventions to address your child's specific needs. All right, we'll move on to the next question. How often does the school need to reevaluate my child? Does that always need to be formal testing? So the school needs to reevaluate your child every 3 years. If you and the school agree, your child can be reevaluated sooner. So a reevaluation does not need to always include formal testing. So after initial evaluation, the reevaluation will be most helpful if it describes the progress your child has made. So if your child has not progressed as expected, there should be data describing your child's current needs and how those needs are impacting his progress in his enrolled grade level curriculum. All right, we'll move on to the next one. In my ARD meeting, we did something called a read. What is that? So a read is a review of existing evaluation data. So during the initial evaluation, the evaluation team first reviews existing data about your child, such as information from you and your child's teachers, grades, attendance, discipline records. It could be results on state assessments and district benchmarks, and any outside evaluations that you may have provided. Then the team can determine what additional testing is needed, if any, and what additional data needs to be collected. So a read is also the first step in reevaluation. Existing data is carefully reviewed. So sometimes the ARD committee requests more testing or more data to be collected. However, sometimes no additional testing or data is needed. So in this case, the read becomes the reevaluation date. All right, we'll move on to the last question. I signed consent for a special education evaluation, but now I'm moving. What happens? If your child is in the process of being evaluated for special education eligibility and enrolls in a new school district before the evaluation is completed, the new school district must coordinate with the previous school district to ensure prompt completion of that initial evaluation. Since you signed consent for a special education evaluation in your previous school district, the timeline for completion of the evaluation has begun. Okay, before we wrap up, I wanted to provide some links to some resources that you might want to review. The two documents in particular, the Parent's Guide to the ARD Process and the Notice of Procedural Safeguards, will definitely be useful in understanding that special education evaluation process and your rights as a parent. And note that these are currently being updated because we had quite a few commissioner rule changes in the recent months. Then the overview for special education for parents form that we discussed earlier, it's super useful to get a simpler understanding of the special education process. And then finally, you have some links to relevant Texas Administrative Code provisions and a link to the TEA guidance for the comprehensive evaluation of specific learning disabilities, which is also in the process of being revised because of commissioner rule updates. Okay, so thank you for having me TEA present to you today, and please continue to visit spedtex.org with questions and find resources. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Please check out the January SpedTex webinar, where we'll continue this fictional case study about the ARD process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mandy, for that information. We really appreciate your time today and for being here. At this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Stephanie McLaughlin to share a little bit more about Partners Resource Network.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Mandy, for the information. We appreciate it. So if you have any questions, please reach out to us at Partners Resource Network. You can call us on our 800 number, you can email us, or you can check out our website at prntexas.org. On our website, you can find information about your regional coordinator in your area. You can find information about upcoming events in your local area, as well as our statewide webinars, and a wealth of information for you as parents. So please reach out and let us know how we can help you.
Thanks, Stephanie. Have questions about special education? Contact us at SpedTex, your source for special education information. We are happy to help. Our contact information is on the screen.